Welcome, everybody, to a brand new episode of the Inspiration Accelerator. I'm Michael Sonbert here once again with another incredible world-changing human, Miss Dawne Hanks. Dawne is the founder and owner of an organization called Eliminate Girl Hate, and she's also the host of a brand new podcast called Wait, Hold Up, What?, which is launching on May 1st. Actually, your podcast will likely have launched before this episode comes out. So, folks, immediately after you listen to this, don't go right now, but after you listen to this, go check out Wait, Hold Up, What? Dawne, thanks so much for coming on the show. How are you?
I'm doing really great. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm so psyched to talk to you. Just tell our listeners where you I'm right now, I'm in a city called Beloit, Wisconsin. You're all the way on the West Coast. I'm just right north of the Illinois border. You're out in Portland, right?
Yep, Portland, Oregon, born and raised.
Yeah, what's going on? I've been to Portland a few times. I love that city. What's happening? What's happening out there? Lots of
You
funky
know,
bars, lots of cool
yeah,
restaurants.
yes, lots of wine, lots of beer, lots of weirdness. We like to keep it weird here, and that's
Yeah,
probably why I like it.
that's
I think we're
cool.
all a little bit of a beautiful weirdo, so it's kind of nice to be in a place that celebrates that.
That is cool. That is cool. Yeah, every time I've been out there, it feels like just some of the most unique folks on earth are
Definitely.
out and about. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show. Super excited to talk to you. I want to get to your podcast in a minute, but before we get there, tell us about Eliminate Girl Hate and what that is. I have an Eliminate Girl Hate sweatshirt, which I believe you know,
Yeah.
and I wear it all the time. I love the message. I love the design. It also fits me really well, so that always helps.
We're
And I
hitting
get
it
a
on
lot
all levels there.
on all fronts. I get a lot of stares.
Sure.
Uh, some good. I was in the airport in Atlanta once, and a woman came up to me. She had two little girls with her, who I assume are were her daughters. Maybe I shouldn't assume that, but I did. And she pointed at my shirt and she said, "Thank you." I was like,
Mm.
"Oh yeah." And it was like, "Yo, you're welcome. It's not me. It's my friend who has this organization, but it gets a lot of attention when I'm out and about. So tell folks about it. What is it? Why'd you start it? What are you trying to do?"
Definitely. So technically, the business has been around since 2015. At the time, I had been working for a company and I had been traveling the country and talking about the economy of gender. And what I mean by that is this idea that, you know, 80% of all purchases are made by women, made or influenced by women, and that's a global number. And yet, the amount of women involved in the production of products or the manufacturing of products is less than 10%. And
Mm.
so there's a disconnect there, right? And because of that, there's lots of products in the marketplace, technically now that are made for women, but most of them employed a pink it or shrink it philosophy. So if you're not
What does that mean?
familiar with that, it's basically take a man's product, make it a little bit smaller and turn it pink and charge $5 more than you would for a men's product, right?
Wow,
And
wow.
that was their philosophy around creating products for women. And so I was really going around the country and talking about why that doesn't work for sustainable growth for businesses and why, if we invested in solutions for women and girls, our companies would be more profitable. It ended up kind of snowballing, if you will, to then being asked to speak other places about other issues around gender and women, because it wasn't a talk that I gave that was like, hey, if you do this, this will happen. It was
Yeah.
about getting into the psyche and understanding women and girls as a segment of the culture and the population and what has brought us to modern day society, and the role of women in that, the role of women and girls, right? I did a lot of conversations around Title IX and the impact of sports on women and girls and education on women and girls and how that influenced the products that are in our lexicon now, right? That we didn't have before. Because there was a need as women became educated and went into the workforce, there were things that needed to happen at home to make that okay and make that doable. So I
Yeah.
ended up at schools and nonprofits, and I started talking about purpose and passion and working in male dominated fields and leadership and all sorts of subject matters, but they always had this lilt or tilt around gender. So I started my own business in 2015. At the time, it was just DawneHanks.com because I wasn't very creative at the time, at least with naming of my own business.
Yeah.
And I quit my job. I started speaking around the country, and I struggled a little, quite frankly, because the brand was me. And
Right.
and while I had been in marketing for 20, 25 years, this idea of selling myself as a product was very difficult for me to wrap my head around. There's
Yeah.
all those, I hate the words, but there was all this doubt that I had about that and about me as a commodity or a product. And
And then hold on, Dawn,
so,
if I could just pause you
yeah,
there for a second,
yeah,
because so much of this podcast is about, people finding ways to I don't like the term overcome, but almost like persevere through,
yeah,
whether it's fear or doubt, insecurities. Was it only doubt? Is there a part of you that like, because I feel like this, that finds like being overly salesy, kind of
yes,
icky. And I'd
yes,
almost just rather like, yeah, we have to charge money. We're business owners, but there's a part of me that would like rather give it away for free. But then I know that people don't really respect things that they get for free. And it's
yes,
taken me a long time to really own like, hey, this is what I'm worth. This is what
yeah,
I'm going to charge. Not everybody's gonna be able to afford that, and that's fine. But I like I need to see my own value. Talk to me about your like
yes.
process there. Like, did you feel some of that stuff? What was
I
that
felt
like?
all of that stuff.
Okay.
I felt that stuff amplified because I was speaking in some way, shape, or form about the concept of equity. And
Yeah.
so, if what I was doing wasn't available or accessible to everybody, then was I going against what I was
Yeah.
actually talking about? And so, there was a
Contradiction.
lot
Yeah.
of that. There was a lot of not thinking I had the right pedigree to be the voice.
Mm,
I'm very myself kind of all the time. You're going to what you see is what you get. And most people in this type of work wear suits and are very buttoned up, and they practice for ages, and I just don't believe in that. I believe if you know the information, you know the content, and you're passionate about it, it's a conversation with people, right? And so in some environments that was great, and in others it was like, well, we need you to be a little more this. And I was really struggling with what that was. And I'm actually looking at kind of my inspiration board is behind my computer, and there's a big black piece of paper, and in silver ink it says the words, I am not Tupperware. And I cannot
mm,
remember if you were in the Zoom call during COVID when that happened, but
yeah.
someone said that to me. They said, you are not Tupperware, and you have to
And
stop
what does that
thinking of
mean? What does
yourself
that
as
mean?
Tupperware.
Yeah.
That you're not going into someone's home trying to sell them a product like Tupperware with a
Mm,
lid, right?
oh, got it. Yeah.
What you are offering to people is your point of view, your perspective, your experience over the last few years. There's value in that, right? You're not just a
Yeah.
plastic bowl with a lid or a tube of lipstick from Avon, right? And you had to stop
Yeah.
thinking about this as you're forcing people to let you in their home and come and
Right.
sell them something that they don't need. And
Yeah.
that really it really hit me. I was very emotional when I heard that, and because that's exactly what I felt. I did not feel I was worthy enough to charge something. And so I had to reframe that conversation and understand why it mattered to me, because this subject matter, this concept of equity for women, girls, or anybody who identifies as such, it means something to me.
Mm,
This is not a shoelace, right? It's not a piece of lumber. It's a way forward. It's a way to make culture and community stronger and better. And because I believed in that, I was afraid that I wasn't the right person to deliver the message because it was so
that's great.
important. I cared about the message more than I cared about it being me.
Wow. There's so much to unpack here. This is absolutely brilliant. I just want to give our listeners a little bit of context that I should have given on the front end. Dawn and I are longtime friends, and we were in the same coaching group, same coaching mastermind. And you're actually the one who invited me in to a group called the Inner Circle, which was still is run under a different name by a brilliant entrepreneur and leader and speaker named Harris the Third. So go check out Harris. Shout out to him. So we were in a coaching mastermind together. You're talking about something that I've felt really strongly, and I believe is probably a hindrance, like to my overall like financial bottom line, and that is that I refuse to do something that I am not like drop dead passionate about. And that's no judgment to people who sell shoelaces, but I have a lot of friends from different coaching groups and different different online forums and people I've just connected with over the years who do X thing, cybersecurity. They invented the new garbage disposal, like all these different things that, and it's no judgment. And some of them are making tons and tons of money, lots and lots of zeros, a lot more than me. And I couldn't care. I couldn't care less. I have to personally do stuff that I would lose sleep over it if I wasn't doing it.
Yeah.
It sounds like you're the same on this.
Yeah. So I struggle with saying that because there is a certain amount of privilege that comes with being able to say that, right?
Right. Yeah, that's a good point.
And I'm very aware of that. But what I will say is I worked a really long time towards a goal, right? And I worked for other companies. And I got to this point where it was all happening. And then someone said to me, I don't know why we hire women in leadership positions when we're a men's company.
Mm,
And everything went black for me. And in that moment, it's why I started the company, it's why I left my job. In that moment, what I knew was the only person who cared about what I was doing was me.
mm,
And no matter how good a company is, right? That company was fantastic, by the way. Uh, I'm the one who cared. And so if I wasn't doing something that felt real and authentic to me, I wasn't gonna be happy. And I'm not saying I can't get that at another company. Um, but it had to be something I cared about. And
yeah.
and I think there's this confusion in the lexicon about that, like that your passion has to be singing or helping people or whatever, right? Some people just like working with their hands and that's their
Right. That's
passion.
right.
And so
Yeah.
if they're into manufacturing and whatever, they're living in that purpose, right? Purpose is so many different things. And yet we grow up in a culture, at least in the US, where we ask kids what they want to be when they grow up when they're 3.
Yeah.
And it can only be something they've seen, right? So, LinkedIn did some sort of survey. This is like 15 years ago. And they asked, like, what percentage of people do what they wanted to do when they were kids? And it
Gotta
was
be a fraction.
8.9%.
Okay. Okay.
But it's because and all those careers, by the way, it was firefighter, policeman, teacher,
Sure.
astronaut, actor, singer. It was all these things we see, right?
Sure. Sure.
And that's how I'm sure that's how you grew up. It's how I grew up. But by doing that, it boxed me in. And
Yeah.
instead, our conversations should be about what do you like doing? Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for me, like my baby book says that at 6 months, I was speaking in sentences. Now, the
Wow.
average kid doesn't do that till like 1.5 years old or something like that.
Yeah.
I always loved to talk. And it was something that was used against me for most of my life because girls
How?
should be
How?
seen and not heard,
Mm,
right? It's not ladylike to talk too much. I was bossy, I was
difficult.
aggressive.
Difficult, I bet, right?
It was. And so
Yeah.
I did all these things to make myself smaller. It never worked, by the way. I am just
Yeah.
too big to fit. Like it's fat guy in a
Yeah.
tiny
Yeah.
coat, Chris Farley, right? Like I was too big to fit into that box. But it was so painful stretching outside of it. And
Right.
it took me a really long time to realize that talking was the gift that I had. And that if we had talked about that, no pun intended, then talking could have been a therapist, it could have been a psychiatrist, it could have been a teacher, it could have been all of these different careers that were opened
Right.
up to me. But I was told it was a negative. So I never dreamt of that. Like I never dreamt of a career. I thought I just wanted to be better at everything I did. I started working
Yeah.
at a very young age. I left home at a very young age. And wherever I worked, it was about how can I make more money doing this? I didn't have an actual dream.
Right.
And until speaking about women, I tell this story so often, but I was on a stage in North Carolina and I did it. And it was a much bigger audience than I anticipated. And I walked off the stage and I'm sweaty and I'm like,
I
my
know the
heart's
feeling.
racing because that's what happens. And I
Yeah.
said, holy crap, this must be what Beyonce feels like. And I'll never forget that moment because in that moment, I felt so centered and grounded. And then it was like, oh crap, now what do I do with it? Right. And that, a lot of people, we search our life for our purpose. That's not the hard part. The hard part is once you found it, how do you make it work for you? Because
Right.
there's a lot of work that goes into that. And getting past the self-doubt that who am I to think I can do this? And I think as women, we I can't say we face it more than men. Everybody has self-doubt, right? But there are a lot more boxes that we're put in as women and
Yeah.
girls.
Yeah. That's right.
And so there's a lot more things, or I like to say it's the narratives that you attach to yourself that
Yeah.
tell you all the reasons you can't do something instead of all the reasons you can. And I'm
Yeah.
just now coming into all the reasons I can. And I'm 48 years old. Like,
Hmm.
holy cow, right? And it's being audacious enough to believe that I can. And some days I believe it, and other days I don't. Still, right? And I'm in the midst of it and I'm building. Um, and because it takes a long time to break those narratives.
And Dawn, I wonder if they're ever truly broken, and if it's just the difference between the people who kind of get there and are daily, in the process of fulfilling or, chasing their passion and fulfilling those dreams, and the people who don't, is that willingness to be, in some ways, perpetually uncomfortable and constantly. I speak on stages as well, which I know it horrifies me. People don't believe that because I'm okay at it and I don't look like I'm horrified, but it horrifies me. And it would be
Same.
so much easier not to. It'd be so
Yeah.
much easier not to. But what I'm doing is so important to me that, for me personally, I can't, I would not be able to live with myself if
Yeah.
I said, the like punishing discomfort of doing this is worth, avoiding that is worth more than the good that I believe I can do if I do it.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if I'm older than you. I don't know if it goes away. Is it has it
I
gone away?
think I think you're right. Like I'm still mortified to go on a stage. Lots of people get to see that when I do go on stage because you can feel it, especially in the beginning, right? I wear everything on my sleeve. I am a raw, open nerve at all times. So the littlest thing, whew. But I do think there is a way to change our narrative in the background. I
Yeah.
think, look, if I'm a big proponent of therapy, I'm a big proponent of things like that, right? It's about what you choose to believe. And
Mhm.
so, we're raised in a way in which we believe everything we hear and things are black and white. And as you become an adult, you realize how much gray is in the world.
Yeah.
And gray is really hard to digest, right? And I agree with you that this, so I am driven by the fact that I do not want anybody to feel the way that I have felt in
Mm,
these situations that I talk about. I
yeah.
just don't. And if someone had told me something, if I had known more, if I had been aware, I might have been, if that puts blame on me, I don't want to say it like that, but I might have had more wherewithal to understand, digest, and change the narrative,
Right.
or keep myself out of situations or those things. And so I think it's, I think every human's core responsibility is to make the world better than it was
Mm,
when they got there. Now, world sounds huge, right? That
right.
could be your family, that could be your
Yeah.
community. It's all relative to what your world is. But if I see pain in the world and I feel it, I cannot not talk about it. I just
Yeah.
can't. I was a kid, like my first protest was in the 7th grade. Like,
Really?
yes, I was a
What were you
big nerd.
protesting? Do you remember?
I do. I did two in the same year. One was about the Gulf War, and I staged a
Got it.
sit out, like we walked out of the school or whatever. And then the other was, and I won't say the names of the companies, but there was a soda machine in our school, and
Yeah.
that company supported governments around apartheid in South Africa.
Got it.
And it was when all of that kind of was really in the cultural dialogue. And so I protested, I wrote letters, I did picketing, and got the machine taken out of the junior high school.
Yeah.
But I just always, I'm a person who believes in speaking up and out for others
Yeah.
because I didn't know how to do it for myself, but I felt
Wow.
so strong doing it for others. And that's what
Interesting.
I
You
use.
you just said, I'm not sure if you caught this in your own language, but you said, you talked about I did two protests in seventh grade. You said I was a big nerd. And it's interesting because, right, these are some of the narratives we say. I hear that and I think it's brilliant and amazing. And I would love, my daughter's much younger than that, but I would love if when she's in seventh grade, she's protesting. My son's as well.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't, I don't think it's nerdy. I think it's amazing. So
I do
kudos to you.
think dialogue around that has changed.
Yeah.
In the late 80s and early 90s, that was not seen as a good, cool, or interesting thing about me by
Yeah.
adults or kids, right?
Yeah.
It was like,
Yeah.
you're going to take the soda machine out of our school, right? Like, it just wasn't what that was. And so at the time,
Yeah.
I was a nerd, right? I was
Yeah.
not, my brother will disagree with me slightly. I wasn't an outcast by any
Yeah.
stretch. I had too much chutzpah to be that. So it was like I kind of knew everybody, but like I was the kid who dressed up. I'll still do this, but for every holiday, like I'm in head to toe. Uh,
Yeah.
the 9th grade lip sync contest, I dressed up as Chunky A. And if you are not of my generation, that was Arsenio Hall's rap alter ego.
Oh.
Yeah, I just was, I I was the
You're
type
all
of,
in.
and I was the type of kid where that was the protective layer
Yeah. Yeah.
because it was not about being me. It was about being something else, making people laugh, making people feel good. Like that
Mm,
was how I protected myself,
mm,
which I think you hear a lot from like people who are on Saturday Night Live and comedians and stuff like
that's
that.
right.
It was just a protective layer to do that. If I could do something for other people, then people won't look at me,
That's
and that
right.
was good. I really liked that.
I wanna hear about Eliminate Girl Hate in a second, but
Yeah.
my protective layer was like ambivalence, disinterest. I would just kind of kill you with, malaise before you could even get close. And it kept an enormous amount of pressure off of me, Michael, to be seen
Yeah.
when I was just down on everything and didn't want to and didn't want, just I thought everything was lame. I didn't, but I said that. and
Mhm.
then people are like, all right, well, I'll move on from
Yeah.
this guy.
Yeah,
Tell
yeah,
us
yeah.
about Eliminate Girl Hate. Tell us all about it,
So
please.
when the light bulb clicked for me, was actually in 2020. And it was when someone said to me, if you don't like marketing yourself, change the name.
Yeah,
I don't know why that I needed to be told that or needed to be
yeah,
given permission, but I
it's
did.
powerful. Yeah.
And they had heard me use the word eliminate girl hate. And they said, that's the name of your company. And so
Mm,
I changed the name. Technically, my company has like a background name, and Eliminate Girl Hate is kind of my DBA, if you will. But,
okay.
um, and I made a logo and everything. But then people were like, okay, but you're not necessarily talking to girls. You're talking to women and businesses and companies and
Yeah,
educational institutions. And so I got a lot of pushback to change the name. But I have stood my ground because so for me, it's all about like breaking biases and eliminating
yeah,
barriers for people, right?
yeah, yeah,
And allowing people to have the space to tell their stories and to be in spaces that are creative, they're equitable, and they're safe. Wherever that space is, that is at the heart of what Eliminate Girl Hate does, right? And so I kept it that way because the first time or the trauma that comes as a woman, it starts when we're a girl. And then the word girl is used against us our whole life. We can be in a workplace function. I had a team of women working for me, and all the men on the team called them the booth babes at a trade show and the booth girls. And I'm
yeah,
like, first of all, these are grown women. we're
yeah,
we're
yeah,
not going to talk that way, right? But
yeah,
and so this idea that we are maligned in that way, it gave me this desire to keep the name Eliminate Girl Hate, because we are all girls to the
yeah,
public. No matter what age we are, we're still treated that way and demeaned. And so I wanted to change that word and give power to that word. I also get a lot of pushback that the word hate is in it, but that is what is experienced, whether it's a microaggression or a
yeah,
macroaggression, whether it is an equitable opportunity, whether it is violence or sexual violence against women and girls. Those things are still at such high numbers around the globe. It is hate. At the end of the day, it is hate, it is ignorance. And so I've kept the name, despite that it does confuse some people, and I understand that. But I believe in what the messaging is that we do. So I speak, whether it be to companies or nonprofits, educational institutions, organizations, and I
yeah.
speak on a wide variety of topics that are practical relative to women and girls, but again, ultimately with a focus on creating safe and equitable spaces. We also do coaching on a group level and an individual level, where it can be for a leadership team or even just individuals who want to be able to understand how to harness their power and embrace that power and use that in stronger ways. And then we have some other projects that we're working on as we move forward with some events, some publishing, some book stuff, things of that nature as well. We've got merchandise, and then we're launching this podcast on March 1st as well.
So unbelievably cool.
Yeah,
I always liked the choice of the word hate.
thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Because I agree that, whether one individual person who might make an insensitive comment might not have hate in his heart in that moment. What you see it when like the kind of the more one side in this country is pushing for equity, regardless of who's or for whom it's for, you see that the claws come out and the teeth gnashed, and people coming for anybody that's going to upset the traditional paradigm.
Yeah,
And whether an individual person actually hates or not, I agree with you that at large,
yeah.
there's a hate, there's a
It's rooted.
disgust, there's a distrust in like
Yeah,
something other than what I know to be right. And for folks listening, just think about if I said to you, yeah, my boss, um, my boss gave us the afternoon off, or my boss is being a real pain in the butt, you know, who would you picture right away? Well, you'd probably picture a man. And that kind of speaks to the problem that you're trying to solve here, is this
Yeah.
assumption that leaders are men. This is a like everything's set up for men. Women can come along sometimes, but only if you all don't make too much noise and act exactly how we want, and in a way that's not going to make us feel emasculated, upset, threatened, whatever.
Yeah.
Really, I like the word hate,
Well, and
and I
it's
like
rooted in past hate. So like you as
mm,
an individual may be like, I don't have a hateful bone in my body, right?
sure, yeah,
But
yeah,
those
yeah,
beliefs that you have are rooted in this patriarchal structure of hate that has existed for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And when you think about hate, we think about it so close-minded and one-sided, right? The same way we think about love. We have very weird ideals around that. But the truth of the matter is that for thousands and thousands of years, women were considered less than.
yeah,
That inherently is a version of one thing being better than another. And that is
yeah,
rooted in a hatred, right? And so
yeah,
that is kind of where that comes from. Is it's like you may not think it's even our conversation around things like race or sexuality and things like of that nature, right? People are like, well, I'm not racist. I just think that blah, 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 blah. And it's
yeah,
like, no, but it's built on an idea that was racist. And
right,
everything is a construct, right?
yeah,
So we're saying things are definites based on constructs that have no reason for being. And when you start to philosophize like that, right? You can go down some pretty crazy rabbit holes of the ridiculousness of our structures and our organizations and things that it did. And at the end of the day, I just want to be seen and heard just like you do, right? And have the space to do that. And I really think storytelling is how that happens, because storytelling creates empathy, it creates consideration, it creates change. And for so many years, the only stories that were told were of white men.
yeah,
And those stories are great. We loved them, right?
yeah,
But
yeah.
there's so many more stories to be told and to learn from and to understand. And that changes so much of what we have in our world and our cultural dialogue if we just allow those stories to be told.
Well, this is so. I'm feeling people all over the country right now, just like being like, oh, like got it, right? The
Yeah.
whole the I'm not racist, but
Yeah.
um, you know the and I do a lot of work in education, which I know like I don't have a racist bone in my body. Somebody said, got it. I'm not trying to prove you wrong. If if your next door neighbor put their house up for sale and a black family bought it versus a white family, if you would feel exactly the same way, there'd be no if there'd be no prejudgment, if there'd be no bias, and absolutely nothing would be different. If your daughter brought home an Hispanic guy instead of what a white guy, right? Instead of, in quotes, rather, not white, like instead of, like, if you like, would you feel exactly the same way? And for even the people who tell me that they're not racist at all, I think the answer would probably be no, which means we have work to do. And it speaks to your point. And I'd love for you to share, if you can, just some of like the statistics about women in the workforce, women in leadership roles, and some of like to paint a picture for our audience of what's actually happening
Sure.
out there.
You know, it's interesting because we do have a leadership problem right now. And a lot of that leadership problem comes from this idea that we don't. So, like, there was an article the other day about how companies are pulling away from using DEI language
Yeah.
in their business planning or their reports to Wall Street and all of that, that they still are going to do those things, but they're no longer using the words because they're afraid of legal repercussions after affirmative action was pulled back and all of these things that are happening. But what we do know is we know that when women are in leadership, most companies see a 3 times growth in their EBIT margins. They see a 40, I believe it's 41 or 42% growth in revenue. They see an uptick in employee retention. And it's not about only having female leaders. It's just about having that. And I hate using words like diversity because, again, I think we have really weird dialogue around diversity.
Yeah.
Uh, Diversity, yes, it means race. Yes, it means gender. Yes, it means religion and sexual orientation and all of those things. But at the heart of it, it's about diversity of thought, right?
Yeah.
And being able to create sustainable businesses means that there's not only one idea in the room. We've got to understand who's going to buy our product. It is not just one person. It's so many different people, and marketing is so different now, right? We have to appeal to all of these different groups. And if 80% of all purchases are made by women and you do not have a woman in that room, no matter how in touch with your quote unquote feminine side or how many women are in your life, you are never going to have that perspective. If you are serving a community of color and there is no one of color on your leadership team,
Yeah.
you cannot service them because you do not know their struggles. You do not know their needs. And I often tell this story about my time at Oakley where we and sorry, we had these nose pads that were made so that your hair did not get caught in your aviator sunglasses. And I
Yeah.
remember when it was brought to the designers, they were like, we design cars and we have architecture degrees and we're not going to design nose pads so your hair doesn't get messed up, right?
Right. Right. Right.
Through a lot of pushing, uh, it ended up happening and they patented this technology and the product got made, right? And when I was presenting it to media, one of the women, and I'm going to use a curse word here for a second, she goes, holy shit, you're solving the world's problems. And we all giggled, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But the reason she said that is because we do not typically get products that are made around a real problem that we have. And so
Yeah.
when it happens, it is like,
Awesome.
it's life-changing, right?
Yeah.
Even if it's just the nose pads on your sunglasses, you just felt so like delivered to. And that is what creates lifelong loyal customers, sustainable business growth, right? You have to evolve with the consumer set that you have.
Yeah.
And it, yes, it's about revenue and bottom line, but it's also about keeping people happy in their positions. It's about creating cultures in our organizations. For God's sakes, will people stop saying we're looking for a culture fit or you just weren't a fit? Because if you're looking for a fit, you're looking for someone you want to have a beer with. And that means
Yeah.
someone who's going to agree with you. That's not what you need in that room. You need someone who's going to challenge you and contribute to your culture and help
Yeah.
your culture grow beyond even what you thought you could do. And this is the challenge of being a solo entrepreneur, is it's just you.
Yeah.
And that's where my struggle came in. It wasn't just about feeling like Tupperware. It was about, wait, if it's just me, I can't do this alone. I
Yeah.
need other people so we can be inspired and we can make sure that it isn't just my experiences, it's other people's experiences, and different people latch on to different things, and we can serve more people that way. I am a 48-year-old blonde white woman.
Yeah.
What do I fully understand and know about diversity and equity, right? I have a very privileged existence. That doesn't mean I don't have troubles. I don't have trauma. I didn't have things that were awful. It just means that I have one set of experiences. And so bringing in a team helped me. It
Yeah.
helped me to have people to ideate with, to grow with, to contribute to what I care about so that it's not just about me, right?
Yeah.
And that's what builds great organizations.
Great. super, super points here, and it's resonating really deeply. Can you speak to what I see as an almost a pendulum that's shifted maybe uh, potentially so far in one direction that it actually hurts. It hurts the cause of women in the workplace. And what I mean by that is, gone are the days of the male boss who smacks the secretary's butt. Um, and that, if anyone were to do that these days, or I would hope so, that, there'd be somebody to be in HR, and likely there'd be at the very least more repercussions than there were back not too long ago. But by the same token, what social media has brought to the forefront is, millions and millions and millions and millions of images of both men and women, but I'm speaking specifically about women here, scantily clad, incredibly sexy, revealing, etc., which in a lot of ways, uh, personally, I think is a great thing. And if you can monetize your looks, and if you can, and that helps people get, and that helps people get access to your ideas. I heard recently about a woman on OnlyFans who makes $500,000 a month.
Mhm.
Fuck yeah, you know what I'm saying? Fuck yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
But I wonder if as this older generation of men kind of like leave the workforce, the whole to smack the secretary on the butt to reuse that term. But now there's this whole new generation of men that, if they're not careful, see women as objects only, or potentially at least much of the time. And do you see that as being like a new paradigm that's going to have to be blown up?
I think it's an interesting paradigm. It's again, we our context and our construct is built around this idea that men cannot control themselves. That
Yeah.
physiologically, the testosterone that's running in them, that if a woman is scantily clad, he's going to have a physical reaction and he should not be blamed for that, right? And what I think what I think is the better part of the conversation is that women are owning their sexuality,
Yeah, I
and they're
agree.
saying, I'm not going to be shamed for enjoying how I look, right? Or I'm not going to be ashamed for enjoying sex, or for putting it out there, right? And it is an interesting conversation, because I think there's really great things when people can have ownership over their own bodies and
Yeah.
their own self, their value and their worth. Where I think that it becomes cloudy is the, and I've always felt this way, is the monetization of something that isn't real.
Yeah. Say more about that.
And that, I think that's what social media brings into it. And I also think, the days of smacking the secretary's butt, they're not done. Um, yes, there is some HR things that are happening in some larger companies, but I've worked jobs where a lot of my role was on the road. And those rules change very dramatically when they're on the road. And it is still a he said, she said, in which the he is valued more than the she, right? And so, look, I get conflicted about it because we still live in a world that allows for that. So, do I think women should dress however they want, present themselves how they want, and put themselves out however they want? 100%. If they are not being trafficked and they are not being used and they are not being commoditized by another person, fantastic. Unfortunately, we still live in a world where a lot of that is not happening, right? And so I think these women are bringing really fascinating conversations to the forefront of ownership and what that looks like, and I just don't think culture is fully caught up to how
Yeah.
do we then deal with that, right? How do we deal with people, because men are doing it too now, right? There's a lot. I mean, if you can make $500,000 on OnlyFans, I don't care if you're a woman or a man. Like, I'm about ready to sell my own feet pics on there, right? Like, that's
Yeah.
what's going to make the money. But it goes back to what we talked about later, is that's what fulfills you, right?
Yeah.
Is that what makes you feel good about yourself, or does it make you feel worse about yourself? And there's so much data around what social media is doing to our children. And you hear about that on the Today Show and Good Morning America, like every day on the nightly news. And yet, I don't think it's just women. And I don't think it's just kids. I think that we are creating these unrealistic ideals for people, and we are not being authentic. We are presenting something that we want to the world without authenticity. And I think that's where the danger comes in. I think men might look at a woman, and porn does this as well, right? It
Yeah.
creates unrealistic expectations of what sex is really like, healthy sex, right? Healthy body images. There's a great organization out in the world called Make Love Not Porn by the wonderful Cindy Gallop, where she's trying to change that industry rather than shaming people for wanting to have a life of sexuality or sexual expression. It's about healthy sexuality and healthy sexual expression. And
Yeah.
it's not about people demeaning and demoralizing and trafficking and all of these horrible things that tend to be
Horrible.
associated with those industries and businesses. And so I do think there needs to be regulation. I think there needs to be conversations in the household about what that means. And those conversations have to be uh, devoid of shame,
Yeah.
because it is
Yeah.
shame that pushes those things and those ideals, right? If a woman
Yeah.
is shameful of her body because it looks a certain way, she might try to live up to unrealistic beauty standards. And she might think that love is found in the appreciation for her body. But at 48 years old, I can tell you that that body changes a lot, right? And, and what you love at 21 is not what you love at 48, right?
Yeah.
And so they're fleeting moments. And so to create purpose, passion, or even professions on something that is continually evolving and changing without a love for what that change is can be really damaging to our psyches, both men and women, and create these questions about how are we supposed to engage with each other.
Yeah. Yeah. Everything you're saying makes such sense. I think that last question is the $1 million question. How are we
Mm-hmm.
supposed to engage with each other? I hear you loud and clear that the smacking the secretary's butt days are not gone. I hear you. Um, but from my perspective, at least, there's much more awareness
Yes, for
now
sure.
about what things are appropriate and not. But then you add in this whole other, you mentioned pornography,
Mm-hmm.
entire generations of boys and men coming along who think that that's
Real.
normal and real. And now uh like just like holy cow, has like, did we make a lot of progress here? And by the way, I love the like, I own my sexuality,
Mm-hmm.
you don't own my sexuality, I'm not here for your pleasure, I do what I want. All right,
Yeah.
I can even monetize that if I want. But have we then, almost in going forward, have we gone backward and sent millions and millions or billions of young people off into the new workforce
Yeah.
with unrealistic expectations around, I mean, just even like commenting on social. I saw something the other day that Megan Fox, the actress, I'm not sure if you know who she is, like
Yeah.
being bullied online for her looks. And it's like, for a lot of people, like Megan Fox is one of the most beautiful women on the planet, and she's getting bullied. I don't
Yeah.
know how they're defining that,
Yeah.
because people think that they can say something
Yeah.
without repercussion. And, those of us with young kids too, like it's really scary. Like, no, you don't just say, like, you can't just say that. Like,
And
it's
it's
not fake,
because
it's
we
real.
don't have safe spaces for dialogue. I
Yeah,
mean, I really do believe that, because I hate to use this because it's so cliche sounding, the whole concept of hurt people, right?
yeah, yeah,
But people lash out because they've been lashed out too. So if
Yeah.
I'm going to feel like crap, I'm going to make somebody else feel like crap. And I
Yeah.
didn't used to be able to do that because I'd get punched out, but now I'm behind a computer screen. And so
Yeah.
I have this full autonomy to do whatever I want. And nobody can touch me, right?
Yeah.
And we live in such a culture that violence and being mean, right? Zinging people and stinging and
Being a
making mean
troll
comments,
and
it
the
sells.
haters.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're attracted to it. Like, I've always found it fascinating. I don't have kids, so I'm not judging parents here. I just find it fascinating
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
that we will let kids watch superhero movies with violence and shooting and killing and death, but we won't let them watch a movie about sex
Yeah.
when sex is so natural. And so we shame around sex,
Yeah.
right? Which then creates these weird things because, by the way, girls are shamed about sex. Boys
Yeah.
are not shamed about sex.
That's right.
And so we create and we perpetuate these conversations. And then we wonder why we have violence and we have school shootings and we have people that want to lash out. It's because we are not having conversations and we are not talking about how to express our feelings, right? Women are allowed to, men are not, but women are only allowed to do it in certain environments and in certain
Right.
ways. And when we do that, we're basically shoving it. I heard this description the other day. It's like you have a ball or a beach ball, right? And you're trying to hold it under the water, right? And you're
Mm.
holding it with one hand, and your other hand can't really do much because all of your energy is putting that ball underwater. And if you
Yeah.
slip or let go, the ball
Yeah.
comes up, smacks you in the face, water goes everywhere.
Yeah.
That's what's happening in our culture. Is we are
Yeah.
shoving down all of these things. And then it smacks us in the face and we act so surprised. Like, I personally, I'm an aunt to 3 amazing little boys. I will not play Army or anything with a gun. That includes a squirt gun.
Yeah.
Now, that's very hard for those boys. And I explained that Aunt Dee does not like to play with guns or war because she doesn't believe in hurting people. That's not what she wants. She wants to love people, right? And and I have stood really firm in that ground. I will
Yeah.
not do it because I'm not going to perpetuate that. And then I accidentally took him to play laser tag without fully understanding. And afterwards, I was like, I can't believe I did that.
Right.
Right. And so we all have to evolve and learn, and nobody's
Agreed.
perfect, right? But it is about explaining to kids and explaining to grown-ups why we do the things we do. If you're mad at me, tell me why you're mad. If you don't think a woman should be a leader in your organization, tell me why. Let's have a dialogue around it. Because
Yeah.
I bet you I can give you proof that you're wrong. Like, I'm not trying to be mean, right? Or be combative. But if
Yeah.
you think that women, like, I hear this all the time, well, women are just not good salespeople.
Well, I've never heard that.
I disagree with that, right? Or if you're in a traditionally male environment, I've worked in IT and tech software sales, and they were like, women just really struggle here. They do struggle in that, but they don't struggle because they don't know how to sell. They struggle because of the things that are being done, said, and perpetuated on them in the industry that
Yeah.
makes it hard to remember why you loved being there in the first place. If I am
Mm.
constantly maligned, aggressively assaulted, called names, disrespected, dismissed, after a while, I don't want to be in that space anymore because it takes a lot of bravery, courage, and pain to be the first. It takes a
Mm.
lot, right? It wears on you. It is not a comfortable position to be in. And sometimes you want to give up because you think it shouldn't be that hard. I just want to be someplace where it's easy to go to work every day. I don't want to come home every day frustrated and crying because I'm working so hard and they don't see me.
Yeah.
So they're not giving up on what they love. They're giving up on the space that doesn't allow them to do it. And
Mm.
I don't think that is discussed enough.
Really brilliant. Taking up too much of your time, but tell us about your podcast. Tell us
Sure.
what it's about, what it's called, what we
Sure.
can expect from it.
So, we've kind of all been there, right? We've been in a place where somebody says or does something and it's so outlandish that we kind of look at them and go, wait, hold up, what? Like, did I hear that right? Did I
Right.
see that right? That's why we called it wait, hold up, what? It's all
Yeah.
of those little things around being a woman or a girl that has made you stop in your tracks and be like, am I crazy here? Why is this happening? Let's discuss why it's happening. Let's put those stories front and center, and let's give a safe space to dispel those myths around gender, to find out a path forward on how we can work together to change it, to support
Wow.
each other in being in those spaces. And so every episode from this first season is either a direct quote of something that I have experienced or heard in my life, both
Mm,
personally and professionally. And then I'm inviting real women to come in and tell their own stories. I'm not going after these crazy big names, right? Or you don't have to have a fancy title to be on the podcast. You just got to have a story you're worth telling, or you're worth telling, you're willing to tell, right? And we just have discussions about those things. And some are absurd and we laugh, and some have caused a few tears and anger. And it's just about creating that safe space so others cannot feel so alone in it and can know that there is a way forward.
oh my gosh. I cannot wait to listen to it. As I said, this episode will be out after Wait, Hold Up, What is
Yeah.
launched on May 1st. Folks, please check it out. Dawne, where can people find you on social media? Where can they find Eliminate Girl Hate? How can they connect with you if they'd like to?
Sure. So the podcast will be airing on iTunes and Spotify, so you'll be able to find it. Just look for Wait, Hold Up, What? And then on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, it's eliminate_girl_hate. But if you put eliminate girl hate, you'll find us. And then wait.holdup.what. But if you put wait, hold up, what, you'll find us as well. So follow us. You can learn all about the guests that are coming on there. We've got a great website at eliminategirlhate.com where you can see the work that we do and inquire if you would like to hire us to come to your organization or a group that you have, and you can cop some of the cool swag.
Folks, please reach out to Dawn. I've seen her speak. It's an absolutely amazing experience. Please bring her into your organization. Check out what she's up to. Check out the podcast. Check out Eliminate Girl Hate. Dawn, thank you so much for coming on. I learned a ton. I know people all over the country who listen to this show have learned a ton. Really appreciate you being here. Thanks so much.
Thank you. I had a great time.
Awesome. Folks, check us out next time on our next episode of the Inspiration Accelerator. Until then, have an awesome week or 3 weeks or a month. I don't know when the next one's coming out, but I'll talk to you soon. See ya.